Okay, great. Looks like there's several people online already, so we'll get started. This is the Data Access Basics course to go over some basics of what's called SQL. So we're going to do a little poll real fast to see if you guys have used SQL before or not. So let's you should see a little pop-up on your screen. That's pretty cool. I like this feature. All right, so quite a few users of SQL already. So hopefully this course is valuable for both of you. This, I will say that I'm starting at the very basics, and we'll get to some, I wouldn't say advanced, but some intermediate level SQL in this course. And then I encourage all of you to stay, well, there's a different webinar that starts in exactly an hour from now that is an advanced SQL for Lawson users. And that focuses less on how to write SQL code, but more on how to find the data you're looking for, and we'll get into some kind of nifty SQL tricks as well. So looks like everybody is almost loaded, and I'll take this off of the screen. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to cover in this course. We're going to talk about an overview of what databases are, some quick intro to SQL, and then we'll jump right into doing select statements, which is what we're going to use to actually pull data out of the database. And then we'll talk about some examples of grouping and sorting, and then introduce you to some tools briefly that can get you started in your SQL adventure. So what is a database? Really kind of at its very basic level, it's an organized file structure built so that you can retrieve data very quickly and easily, right? So, and the data is typically organized in there in such a way that it is useful to your business. So, for example, modeling the availability of rooms in a hotel so that you can find a hotel room vacancy. So if you were to imagine how you would store that data, you would store it in such a way that you can find vacancies very easily, and you can sort by hotel rooms and things like that. So a database is built so that that type of information can be looked at in an efficient way. So what is SQL then? SQL stands for, or SQL, as you'll hear those two terms interchangeably. It stands for Structured Query Language. So in order to talk to a database, you need some way of, some protocol for speaking with it. And that protocol, there's actually several different types of databases. I kind of forgot to mention that. And there's several different ways of speaking to databases. What we're talking about today is mainly relational databases. So those are databases where each set of data is related to other sets of data within the database. So within these relational databases, this query language, this SQL, is the preferred way of accessing data. Now, there's many, many ways of accessing data out of a database. You can write programs to do it. There are report writing tools that can do it. But really at their base, a lot of them do use SQL. And so SQL allows you to access and manipulate data. And we'll talk about some of that manipulation. So it can retrieve data from a database. You can insert new records into your database. And you can update existing records into your database. And you can delete records from that database. Now, we're not going to talk about those last three. We're more interested in retrieving data in this very basic step, but I will show you how you can go and learn about all of the rest of everything right after we're done talking about retrieving data. So, and there's a lot more you can do with SQL as well. You can actually manipulate the database. You can create new tables and change existing tables. There's lots that can be done. So, what does your Lawson system look like? Really, at its very rudimentary level. Now, this isn't accurate from a system structure standpoint. So, and I'm not trying to be very accurate here. I'm just trying to give you a picture of where your applications sit and where your database sits versus where you are. So, where I have that user in this diagram, that's kind of where your portal screen and whatnot sits. That's called the presentation layer. And then you've got this application layer, which is kind of where the pieces of code are that run the business logic. And then in a whole different layer is all that data that's stored. So really, to retrieve that data, you create a call to one of the screens. So the user clicks on HR11, for example. HR11 then has a set of rules that go to the database to retrieve data and to manipulate data. And then the database returns the data to HR11, and then HR11 shows it to you in Portal. So what we're going to talk about today is how to access this data without having to use the screens that Lawson provides us. So really kind of going around all that business logic to get into the data. Now, is this recommended? Sure, why not? If you're being smart about it and if you're doing it for the right reasons, then there's no harm. So what we talked about earlier is all those different things that you can do. We're going to concentrate really on this select statement, since this is a relatively new group to SQL. About half of you guys have never used SQL before. So we're going to talk about the select statement, and then we'll show you some examples too, if we're lucky and everything kind of works out in this. I don't like using live demos typically because things never go your way, but this is a pretty simple live demo, so I don't think we should have a problem. So let's see here. Okay. So we've got the select statement on the screen, and so this is just to kind of show you the format of what a select statement would look like. And it's quite simple, as you can tell. It's really what you would say if you were kind of just saying this in English, because really what you're saying is, I want the first name and last name of every employee. So it's basically having you put that in machine form so that it can be understood. And then, so you basically say select, and that's a keyword within SQL. And I've tried to, within this whole presentation, I've tried to highlight all the keywords in a different color and keep them bold so that you can understand what a keyword is versus fields and whatnot. So the keyword versus the keyword select, and then followed by first name and last name. And those are the names of the fields within our database, so it's important that we know exactly how those are spelled and if our database is case sensitive and things like that. But I'll show you how to verify all this information. And then we say from, and I got to know where to get that from. So I happen to know that the employee first name and last name for our Lawson database is stored within the employee table. Okay, so never mind how I know that for now, but the fact that you know that is relatively trivial once you get started. So all I say is this, basically select first name and last name from the employee table, and sure enough, SQL will go and do that operation for me and bring back the first name and last name. Now, you can use your imagination and see how powerful that can be to get that sort of information out of Lawson, because I could have said anything, right? First name and last name are a very simple example. For example, I could have said I want also the employee status of these employees. And furthermore, I could have given my SQL statement a condition. The condition could be used in this case that says, I want employees that have the status of AG. The way I say that is you'll notice that the first part of this is relatively exactly the same as before. So it's a bunch of fields from the table employee. And now I've given it another keyword here, another SQL command or keyword really called where. And that allows me to create a condition where employee status equals AG. So then it only returns those records that have the status AG. So this is, you can think of this as a way to filter the result set that you would normally get. But what is the status AG? So if you're new to my Lawson system, you might not know what status AG is. So we've gone through here and created a slightly more complicated statement. And I've color-coded this, which may at first look daunting and confusing, but trust me, this is probably the better way of looking at it after several iterations. I'm trying to find out so I want to actually provide you the information now that says what AG is. Now you notice that the result set below, you can already see that AG actually stands for agency. So that information is not in the employee table. So I could not say, give me the first name, last name, status, and the description of the status from the employee table, because the employee table doesn't hold that information. The way I do that is I can say select first name, last name, employee status and description from employee status and another table called EM status, where the employee status is AG like before, but now I'm also giving it a way to connect those two tables. And I'm saying where from my employee table, and that's where you see in this yellow rectangle here, you'll see that I've said employee.mStatus equals emStatus.mStatus, meaning the status of the employee is the same as the status code on the emStatus table. Now, if you were to look at the emStatus table or the emStatus table, you would just basically see all the status codes with their descriptions. And we'll take a look at this in a second. It's a little difficult to switch back and forth, but let me do that real quick. So I hope you can see my my SQL window here. So if I were to say select from EM status, and we'll go over what I'm doing here, so don't worry if you're getting lost. You'll notice these are all my status codes within Lawson, right? So I actually have quite a few. I have 45 status codes. You may not. An agency happens to be the first one. And I've said select star, meaning give me every field, so every column that's available to see. I could have just said select status and description. I could have just said that. And you notice I keep highlighting it before I execute. So I could have just said that, and it would have returned just those columns. But I chose to say, and I'm going to just copy and paste this, I chose to say return star, and that returned everything. And I could have actually said return star where EM status equals AG. Remember, the where allows me to, actually it's EMP status equals AG. And remember that star allows me to get every column, and the where allows me to narrow it down to one result. So it's really simple what we've done here, right? Now, we've talked about the one that's on our slide is the one I'm highlighting now, is we're joining these two tables together, because if I had just said return the employees with the description, that employee table doesn't have that information, so I need to bring in this other table, and sure enough, when I run it, it knows to get the description code for each of the statuses. So in effect, it's joining these two tables. Now, let me just kind of help you see what I mean by this. You notice I'm on the left here. I'm expanding my database, and these are all the tables within your Lawson database. And in the next webinar, we'll go through how to find out what these are and how to look at them. You notice there's quite a few, and each one of these things. So let me get back to one that we're going to be familiar with. So if I go to the employee table, each one of, like, employee table has all these columns, and the ones we're dealing with obviously are first name and last name, so that would be somewhere in here, right here, first name and last name. But you notice, like I said before, and I'm really trying to drive this point home, it doesn't have information for the description of the status code, the status code. That is in a whole different table called EM status, happens to be just right here, and there's that description. So in order for me to connect those two tables together, I need what's called a key field, and that's what this is. Basically, it tells me that the key to this table, meaning the way you define unique records in this table, is EM status, and we'll go over how to do that in the next webinar, how to determine what the key fields are and whatnot. Okay, so let's get back to our presentation here. And you might have also noticed that I had to put the table name behind each one of these. So behind each one of these fields, because technically it doesn't know which table description is in. Even if I mention it here, it wouldn't know which, because you can think of, I may have a description field on the employee table as well. It wouldn't know which one I'm talking about. So I have to kind of say employee.firstname, employee.lastname, employee.mstatus, and emstatus.description. Now that sounds like a lot of typing, right? So one way to get around that is by using something called aliases, and you'll see this quite a bit. So here, I basically said, so let's just skip down to this from section. Remember, from tells us which tables things are going to come from. So I said employee space EMP and EM status space STS. So what I've basically said is you get the data from employee, but for the context of this query, employee can be abbreviated into the letters EMP. So I don't have to type as much anymore. I could have actually gone a step further and just done this for one letter. I could have just said E instead of EMP, or S instead of status. And these would have been E.firstname and E.lastname. But I like doing these three-letter acronyms sometimes because it kind of helps me understand the query a little bit better. If I come to visit it, let's say a couple months from now, I don't have to go read the entire thing to find out where things are coming from. So now let's talk about grouping a little bit. Now, the power of SQL really comes into itself when you talk about some of these more advanced features. So one of those is grouping. Grouping can help you put several fields or group a set of fields together. So here you can see we've grouped all the statuses together, and the way you do that is you have to use one of the grouping functions. So count is a grouping function for us, and we've used that here to show the counts of each one of the groups or one of the statuses. Or you can use a summation to really kind of along the lines of the same grouping. We've said we can sum all the transaction amounts for a fiscal year for an accounting unit account. And the group by fields that you see down here are the basically every other field that's on there. So if I were to tell you, give me all the employees that are in process level 30, I would return, let's say 1,000 employees. But if I wanted to see how many employees are at process level 30, remember, only one field or one record would return. It would be process level 30 followed by count. And this is the same principle. Again, we talked about wildcards, and that's basically a way to return every field on a table, and you just use an asterisk for that. And there's another trick, which is a percentage sign, which allows you to return a regular expression, a pattern within a field. So in this case, we've said, give me all the first names and last name where the last name is like ST followed by, whatever. So it returned everyone whose last name started with the letters ST. So that's Stephen, Stuart, Sterling, whatnot. You can do a lot of different types of operations, like equals to is what we've been using. You can do greater than, less than, or, equal to and greater than. And then in between, like, you just saw the like one. And then there's one called in, which is really powerful. So you can say, give me the first name, last name, and department of every employee who is in department. And you don't have to actually say which department specifically. You can give it a list of departments. And that's what in does. In can give you can give in a list of departments, and it will return all of those employees. And that's how you see that here. One more feature I want to go over that's very useful is the order by feature. So I can do that same list, but now I can say order it by the department in ascending order. So now you see department 1,000 people come first, and then 1,020. So if I were to do group and order by together, I can get a pretty decent report. So what do you need to get started doing your SQL queries? You need a SQL client, and that is what I've been using in this webinar up here. One comes with, I'm assuming a lot of you are Microsoft shops. Many of you are not. And SQL Server is regularly what you may have with a Microsoft installation. You might also have Oracle. But on a Unix installation, for example, you will have either DB2 or Oracle. These are just different flavors of the database. So why am I mentioning that? It's because these clients are not that interchangeable. Now, one that is interchangeable, and it happens to also be free, is called Toad. So you can Google Toad SQL client, and you can download that. It's quite easy to use. It's actually very powerful. So I would definitely start it out with the advanced features turned off, and there's a way to do that. Then you need your connection information in order to connect to your database. So that's just your server address, a port number. So my port number here is, I believe, 1433. So that's like a 4-digit number usually that you need. And then you need a username and password. You can get all of that from your database administrator, and you can just tell them, I only need a user that has select access and only to my dev database or to my test database. That sounds like a reasonable request on its surface. May not be in your organization. I don't know. So we're running out of time because we got to start that other webinar, and I encourage all of you to join that one as well. That's actually a different link that you have to get out and get back into. And if you don't have it, you can quickly run to our website, nogalis.com/education, and sign up for it there. Our Upgrade Bootcamp is coming up on June 18th. I encourage everyone who has not looked into that yet to definitely look into it. I just realized I'm rushing through this, and I'm sorry. We actually have quite a bit of time left. This goes till 10:30 our time. I apologize. I'll go back to some of the examples that I skipped. Boy, I'm really botching this up this time. Here we go. So I'll come back to that the boot camp later. Okay, so let's go back to some of these examples so that you can actually kind of see them. So this is the order by example, and this is one of the more powerful features that you're going to use. So here I've said select first name, last name, and department from employee, where the department is in one of these three departments. Okay. Now I could just run that on its own, and you'll notice it's returned 28 employees that are in these different departments, and that's great. But if I wanted to sort those by department, I could say I want to order the results by department number in ascending order. And it's just as simple as that. I could have also said descending order, DESC. So that's backwards. I could have said order them by last name. Well, okay, so last name descending order gets you that. Okay. Let's go back to this group by, because I'm sure I confused some of you guys, and I was rushing through it because I thought for some reason I was running out of time. I have a timer next to me that kind of betrayed me this time. I apologize. All right, so I'm going to put this on a couple of different lines so you can kind of see what's going on. So if I were to say select company, fiscal year, accounting unit, account, and sub-account, and a transaction amount from GeoTrans, I would never recommend you run this on your system, by the way, because I'm using a system that only has 156,000 records in GeoTrans. Your GeoTrans is more like millions and millions of records. Someone asked me to make this screen a little bigger. Let me see if I can do that real quick. I'm not 100% sure it's possible within this, but we can try. We can try that. Is that better? All right. All right, very good. I would never try this on a regular Lawson system because, like I said, you've got typically several million records. And one thing about SQL, you got to think it's got to crunch all these records and bring them back to you. So if you got users in your system and you're running a really heavy SQL call, you're probably going to slow those users down. Plus, you're going to get a ton of data back. You're going to get several million rows back where that's maybe not what your intention is. I mean, how useful are several million rows of data to visualize, right? You don't want to look at something like that. So you typically wouldn't run this on your system without a where clause. Okay, so I would likely say where fiscal year equals whatever, and I would focus on a specific accounting unit. Okay, but in this case, so that's my qualification for this. My database is much smaller than yours is likely to be. I could run a different version of this and I want to do that to kind of show you help you understand better why we're doing what we're doing. So if I were to just say that, which basically says return these fields from GeoTrans with no qualifications at all, so with no conditions, and execute this. You notice that went pretty quick for me, but for very likely for a system bigger than this, actually it didn't go quick. My bad. It's still saying executing query, so it's a quite big order to do, and it did, there you go, 156,000 rows that it just returned. But you look at this, and honestly, this isn't the most useful thing you've ever seen, right? This is quite a bit of information, quite a bit of records, and really, there's nothing I can say immediately by looking at it, right? What I really want is I want to be able to kind of summarize this information so I can get a kind of per annum view of each process level, or each accounting unit, account, and sub-account. And maybe since my sub-accounts are always 0 in this system, maybe I could have just left that out. But what you can do is you can use the group by function to group some of these together and see a bit of a summation. So the way I've done that here is select company, fiscal year, accounting unit, account, sub-account, and the sum of all the transaction amounts for this combination, okay? And the way I say for this combination is I say group by, meaning for each time, for every record that has all of these the same, group them together and just give me one sum. Actually, that's a good way of saying it. So for every record that has all of these fields in common in value, sum up the transaction amount and return that to me. Okay, so let's see what that does. And I now have to scroll up a little bit every time. All right, you see that was actually quite fast. It's already done. And that's kind of the power of SQL, right? So now I can tell you that in company 100 in 2009, accounting unit 2010, account 407, sub-account 20, I guess I do have sub-accounts, had $752,000 in activity. That's pretty powerful that I'm able to do that. And unfortunately, I don't understand finance very well, but if I did, I could probably show you something even more attractive than this, some better sum account. But, you know, what I could do is I could get rid of account and sub-account just to show you how powerful some of the summation can be. And now we're going to get everything for all accounting units. And that's not very many records at all, right? That's just all my accounting units for each fiscal year. So for fiscal year 2010, you know, I know that accounting unit 2000 had that much activity, and that's pretty good, you know, to be able to see that really quickly. Now you notice I had to use the company as well because I have multiple companies here. I have company 1, 2, and 500, and 100 and 200. So I have like 5 companies here. So I got to be really careful because if I didn't have this field here, if I'd taken this out, my data would probably be wrong because it would have summed everything for all accounting units. So this figure for fiscal year 2008 of accounting unit 1000 actually isn't correct now for any of the companies because it's a summation of the accounting unit 1000 in all my companies. So you want to make sure that all your fields that you care about are in here. I can just undo. So I hope everybody understands this grouping idea. So that's that. And I wanted to kind of show you a little bit about more of those wildcards and the regular exploration because I skipped over it really quickly. So if I do something like, so if I were to select all my employees, you're going to see a lot of employees, right? I've selected everything from every employee. Not a very useful thing when I'm just looking for employees who are, you know, let's see, me think of something interesting about these employees. Let's say I want to see all my Minnesota employees. So that's good, I got that. These are all my Minnesota employees. But let's say that I want to focus on employees who live within a specific, like every employee that lives on Lake Drive, for example. Well, the problem with Lake Drive is you're going to have several addresses on Lake Drive. So even though it doesn't seem to be the case in our database, we're going to show you how that would work. And the way, by the way, I like to format my SQL on different lines. So I always say select star, and then I put the from on the next line, and the where clause I start on the next line, and then I follow it by the keyword and. That's how you add another filter to your results. So I can say I want to see everyone who's ADDR1, so that's their address 1 field, is like anything followed by lake followed by anything. So as long as it has the word lake in it, I want to see this employee. Oh, good. So we got one person in Lakeview and then 4 people that apparently live together on Lake Drive. But you see how powerful that can be, is being able to put these regular expressions in there. I could even say the word drive here. So actually, let's make it a little more interesting. I can say the word east here. You notice I'm trying to get to this record, right? So if I say the word east, it only returns that one. And you notice, even though this is 133 Lakeview Road East, I was able to say anything with that percentage sign between lake and east, and that included the word road and the spaces around it, so I was able to get that. Okay, good. So how do you find out all these nifty tricks? And we'll show you that next. Really, Google is your best friend. So if you were to just go to a place called W3 Schools and follow that with SQL, or I wouldn't even go that far. You can just say SQL tutorial. Just Google that, and you'll notice that W3 Schools is the first place that pops up. That's always a good sign. Google seems to like them. And you can go through W3 Schools tutorial. This is a free site. You don't even have to sign up. It's got plenty of examples. You can learn every bit of everything practically on here. And you'll notice SQL is actually quite complicated. So in this session, we've gone through about that much. So the first 2, 4, 6, the first 7 things, and then I've also kind of covered some of these down here, and those. We've done a simple join, even though you probably didn't know it was called a join. That's where we connected the 2 tables together. But if you run through this and you just keep hitting next chapter down here, it'll walk you through just about everything you need to know about SQL. And it's all very nicely done. Forget all these ads. Don't click on these, obviously. But got really great examples to help you understand. I believe that back in the day, this is probably how I first learned SQL, and I'm able to now use it every day. Another resource is a website called Stack Overflow. You can just Google Stack Overflow. And this is where people post all kinds of problems that they're having. So this isn't limited to SQL. In fact, W3 schools is not limited to SQL. That also can teach you just about anything. But in Stack Overflow, you can post a problem you're having with your SQL queries. So let's say you're trying to do something that you don't know how to do, and you're in W3 schools is not helping you. Stack Overflow is a place where you can go and post a new question and be specific about it. Put your example of what you're trying to do, like how far you've gotten, and the kind of results you're getting, and the kind of results you want to get, and then you'll be able to get some pretty great responses within literally minutes. I mean, people will solve your problem and post it right back on there for you. And the other thing I promised you, which we kind of glossed over very quickly, is how to actually connect to your database. So if I were to do Toad SQL client, that's the keyword I would search for. And Quest Software is the company that makes this specific one. And you can go to, I believe, product and code for SQL Server. And you notice they have a different flavor for each one of the different types of databases. And you can just click download and download that and install it. It's a little complicated. So if you can figure out someone within your organization that has used Toad to help you, that may be a great way to start. But if you're a Microsoft customer, you really should consider just using the Management Studio, which is what I'm using here. There we go. This is the Management Studio, which is a Microsoft product that you already have within your organization. I don't know about the licensing that you may need. And then you just ask your database admin to set you up with a username password. You don't want to ask him to give you like the Lawson username password, because that is a very powerful account. You can really screw things up. And I would really start with your test server before you do anything in your production environment. So let's go back to our PowerPoint here. Okay, let me just make sure we didn't skip over anything. So these user credentials you're going to get, there's two ways that can happen. They can either use the same user you're using to log into, Windows every day. You can technically do that, or they can give you a specific user on the database. Just make sure you only have rights to view the data, nothing outside of that. One thing to consider, by the way, when you do this, you're walking right around the Lawson application. Lawson doesn't even know you're around at this point, so it doesn't have any ability to apply security to you. So, if you're planning to give somebody this type of access, keep in mind that they'll be able to look at all the data that they will have access to, regardless of what you've done in Lawson security. Okay. All right, so we've got a lot of different webinars coming up. We sent out a big email, and I'm sure that's how you found out about this one. There's quite a few webinars. There's actually, if there's any M3 clients on the call today, there's one coming up for that in a couple of days on I believe on Thursday. And we've got our boot camp, 10X Upgrade Boot Camp coming up here on June 18th. That's a full day that is designed to kind of show you exactly what you need to prepare for your upgrade. There's a lot of customers that open up this upgrade process and they just jump into it and they realize all kinds of gotchas once they got in. So we want to make sure that everybody's really prepared for the upgrade process. We've got people from N4 that are actually going to be here hosting that event, and we're participating as well in a couple of different sessions. There's tons of information on our site about this, so if you just go to nogalis.com/bootcamp, you can find out about that and sign up for it. You can either attend on-site here in Orange County if you're local, or you can attend virtually. With that, I can open it up to questions. And there's a few here, so let me go ahead and take a look at them. What are you using toad data pointers? So someone said that they're using something called toad data point, and I've never used that before, but thank you. Yeah, that's a good suggestion. And do you have any other questions about using SQL? Keep in mind we're doing a more advanced one in about 15 minutes here that I hope that you join. And if you haven't, if you don't know how to get to that, or if you haven't signed up for it, it is not too late. There's actually twice as many people signed up for that one. I believe there's over 100 and some odd people signed up, but there's still going to have a capacity of 200. But if you go to our site, and I can kind of share this screen with you real quick. So under this education section, you'll notice that there's a set of webinars right here. And right now we're doing this one, and then the next one is right there. If you click on it, you can go and click sign up, and then you'll get an invite from any meeting that allows you to join the next one. In that one, we're going to be talking more about how to find that information within Lawson, and we'll talk about some queries within Lawson as well. And lots of different tools that are available to you within the Lawson application that can help you. One of the other tools that is available that we didn't use here is a tool called SQL Plus. So if you absolutely don't have any access to a SQL client that you can use, and but they have given you rights to the data, within LID, you may be able to just type in SQL Plus, and that's a utility that's installed on your server, and you'll be able to write SQL queries and get results back, but I'll warn you, that is not a fun experience, and the output of the results is just a bunch of garbled text. You have to kind of copy and paste into something useful. You don't get this really nice kind of grid view. So are there any other questions at all about just general SQL and other resources that you may need to get your questions answered? Okay, so with that, I am going to close up here and get prepared for the next session. I really hope you join us. I hope that I will not make that same mistake again of thinking I'm running out of time. So the question is, will there be a download of the screens? I'm assuming you mean this presentation. Yes, I will make this available for download. We actually have all our presentations from the past available for download, but I'm not sure we're going to continue to do that. This particular one will be available. There are 6 or 7 other ones that are available, and I will make this one and perhaps the next one available as well. But I think in the future, we're going into a rebroadcast model where we will redo the presentation online again. But yeah, this will be available right from our site in about a couple of days. So we'll send you an email reminder when it is. Okay,